Thank you so much for joining today. I think everybody is here, and just so everybody knows that you have been unmuted. So just for practical reasons, you're also very welcome to turn off your camera if you want. I will primarily, and then I'll turn over to some of my colleagues. So welcome everyone in this masterclass, this webinar about certification management. I've been looking really much forward to today. My name is Anya Paget. I'll be your host, and I will start you off today with talking about certification and their roles in the fashion industry, about certification landscape, and of course, how to get started, what to be aware of, how to work with it within your strategy in the company, the different types of certifications, and so on. So you'll get a broad perspective of working with certifications and standard in the fashion industry. After that, I'm very pleased to be joined by Signe and Camilla. Camilla Pedersen is the sourcing and production manager for wheat, and Signe Mørk Sørensen is a CSR consultant, and she also works as an auditor for Control Union. So she is also the one that comes out to audit the companies that have chosen to become certified. After that, we'll have a chance to meet Ulla, who works at Deloc, and she will go through how it's possible to manage certification standards, transaction certificates, and so on in Deloc. And in the end, you'll have a possibility to ask any questions to either myself or the three participants. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, don't hesitate to just put them in the chat, and I'll either answer during the presentation or I'll put up the questions to Signe, Ulla, or Camilla. All right, so let's get started. All right, first of all, I want you to take a look at this. This is called the chain of custody, and so many of the different certifications that we have out there are based on this. What we've figured is, and as many of you also know, that a supply chain can consist of so many links, and this is, to be honest with you, of course, quite a simple one. It can be even longer, might be even more links in your supply chain, which is, of course, the reason that it makes it so difficult in terms of transparency, in terms of knowing who you're working with and where your fibers and your natural materials comes from. So that is the reason that working with certification is a possibility for you to map and work strategically with the suppliers that you're working with, not only in your tier one, in the first part, which is in many cases the garment, the sewing facility, the garment producer, but it can also mean that you are, it's possible to be traceable further down the chain in the supply chain. So the chain of custody, as it's pictured here, you can see that there are all of these links from farm to trader to sourcing to yarn and so on, all the way up to the retailer, all the way up to the brand, which would be the one that most of you would be where you have to be certified as well. So the bottom line is what's called the scope certificates. The scope certificates is what's known as the license to operate. So this scope certificate is what you have to have, you as yourself as a brand, but of course also producers, the garment sewing facilities, the fabrics, the yarns, and so on. All of the links in the supply chain needs to have these scope certificates for you to be able to, in the end, be certified and work with certified materials yourself. On top of in your screen, you can see the TCs, which is the transaction certificates. So those are the ones that validates where the fiber comes from. So if you, in example, are working with a GOT certification, you can validate all the way back to the farm where if it's cotton you're working with, it might also be the wool you're working with, which is GOT certified. You can validate all the way back to the farmer level that material back to the cotton. And the good thing about many of these certifications, as you know, GOTS and GRS, is that they have other parameters that they also work with. So they work, of course, with this chain of custody, which means that you can be assured that the fiber, the resource from the beginning is the same that is used in the t-shirt that you're working with, or whichever garment you're working with. But the good thing about some of the certifications are that, or the standards are that, you can also be assured that they are audited, many of them once a year, and they're audited within other parameters than only the chain of custody. So they're also audited when you look at social responsibility, environmental, and also chemical inputs. Many of them also take a look at. The good thing about a few of them is they do actually also work with quality standards, or they do have parameters within quality as well. So you're able to, when you work with the certification such as GOTS, you also have parameters within this where you have to uphold a certain standard of the garment. That could be an example, peeling grades, that you have to be at a certain level for this to be assured a GOTS certification. Yep. So the next part is that many of you are also aware, and I think everybody is getting more and more aware of the increased scrutiny on the supply chains that there are, the expectations of transparency, the expectations that brands and in general the textile industry has to be able to trace and document where the things are coming from. So the more and more expectations there are to the textile industry, not only from consumer point, they also have the expectations, but in fact also, of course, in terms of legislation at some point, due to the EU and individual countries that has already now put forth laws in the different countries that you have to uphold you have to be able to, it isn't yet the EU legislation that has gone through, but for example, in France, they're already now looking at the responsibility of what you're putting into the country. So there are already coming these legislations, and at some point it will be even more because of the EU strategy that was put forth a while back. This means that you as a company, when you then start to work with certifications and standards, it will make you stronger in terms of the upcoming expectations that there are for you as a brand. We also see it as an business opportunity for your company. That I think is a really important thing to take into consideration, because we'll get to that a bit later as well. And I think Sina can also and Camilla can also talk about the complexity of becoming certified. But you also have to see it as a business opportunity when you work with it. I think that's really important. I have found that going out to these different brands where they are in the process or have already become certified, that it does help them in their optimizing of their processes. It does help them in how are they working with the documentation in their company, how are they working with the creating collections and so on. It helps them in that process, which is a really good thing, I think. It also ensures, of course, the risk management in the company. You suddenly work with suppliers that are certified, which minimizes some risks, of course. You are aware that they will then be audited continuously together with yourself, which also helps risk management. You might also not work with as many suppliers as you've done before, because you're reliant on the fact that they have to be certified. That's also some risk management as well. It of course makes your company strong. As I said, as a business opportunity, it does make your company strong with the future expectations that there are and demands from not only that you are a profit-driven company, but you also actually are driven by the values and the consumers' expectations to you as a brand. It's not only that you have to make clothes, but you have to make clothes that live up to a standard, whether it's social or environmental or anything like that. And then, of course, the competitive advantage, I think, compared to other brands that use conventional cotton, if you then use the GOT certification to assure that it's not only organic cotton, but it also upholds the expectations of social responsibility, environmental responsibility, and chemical inputs in the supply chain, which then in the end gives you the possibility to document what you're actually saying, putting the GOTS logo on your label, and then documenting it with your TCs, with your scope certificates, and reduces the risk, therefore, for greenwashing. You can say something and it will actually be documented, and you can, and that's not greenwashing. So when you want to get started with certifications, one of the things that you definitely have to be aware of is what do I want to choose to work with? Which one do I want to work with? There are many, many out there, but you have to set a strategy for which certification you want to work with. Are we focusing on the social aspect of being certified or having certified suppliers? Do we focus on the environment? Do we focus on chemicals? Do we focus on natural materials? Which materials do we focus on? So because choosing the right materials or working with the materials, that means that you then can choose the certification that matches up to this. So usually you would say that if you're only working with, let's say, 3 t-shirts that are organic cotton, it's probably not the GOT certification that you're supposed to choose to work with. And the same goes for any of the other ones. And of course, be realistic in the choice of certifications. Again, if it's only the 3 t-shirts you're making, don't use the money on a GOT certification because it is very expensive. It's very complex. It can be confusing as well. The standards are not in an easy read, which I think Signe will also agree to. So be realistic in the choice of certifications that you work with and that match up with the general strategy of your company. So the different certification types. So there is, we've divided them into 3 different categories of certifications. There are the company certifications, which are also the social audits. An example of a company certification could be the B Corp certification, which is one that a brand can obtain. And the other one shown on your screen is the social audits. So those are the ones that you can collect from your suppliers, which would, of course, normally probably be your garment supplier, but could also be from the yarn supplier or the fabric supplier or something like that. But in a sense, those are the ones where you can be assured that the suppliers are audited mostly once a year, twice a year, that they uphold this specific social standard. The other ones are the product certifications. Those are the ones where you as a brand, in almost all of the cases, also have to be certified. So that means that is the one where chain of custody becomes important. You have to look at you have to choose the one that fits the product that you're making, whether it's organic cotton, it could be recycled polyester, and so on. So those are one in that category. And the last one, the technical standards, are the test parameters. So those are the ones where if you as a company are working with rain jackets, make sure to test that they are actually rainproof, and you can test them within a standard and then document that they are actually rainproof when they go to the customer. In the top right corner, you can see that there is a QR code. You can scan this, not now, but you can, but you will also get the possibility to do it afterwards because we've made quite a big sheet with all of the certifications that could be relevant of the product certifications and the company certifications and social standards, with an explanation of what they are, what they cover, why not to do it, why to do it, certification bodies, and so on. So this is basically, you can go to that or you will get that afterwards after this presentation. Choosing the certification body, I think Signe will also can touch upon this a bit later in the webinar, but it is quite important to find the right certification body to work with. I normally would say that it could be finding one that operates in your own country, mainly because it's then the same language as you, and they are close by, and it would be easier to ask them questions and get acquainted with these auditors that come out to your company to be certified. They have different systems, different processes. Some have IT systems, some have an Excel sheet. It's very different depending on which certification body you use. And all of the different standards and certifications also have on their web pages, you'll be able to go in and you can see which of the ones are approved by the standard. So these are just some examples. There are many more out there who can help with certifications, and they are different compared to which country you are operating in. The importance of a strong supplier, I think, is really very important when it comes to the fact that you are very reliant on how they work. You're very reliant on them when you start your own process as a brand, and you of course want to be audited and be approved for your certification. You're very reliant on the fact that you have to have all of these things from your suppliers. You have to have their scope certificate. You have to have their transaction certificate. You cannot become certified yourself if you don't have all of these things, if you don't have the documentation to prove the chain of custody for your own supply chain. So it's really important to maintain these strong relationships with your suppliers, because they can help you. I mean, they are your extended arm when you work with a certification. In many cases, they've also been certified for many years, so they're well aware of the process. They're well aware of what they need to know and what they need to do. So yeah, so that's really important. So just to sum up, challenges, of course, it's very time consuming. Let's see what Camilla says about that as well. There is quite a long application process from the time you say, I would like to be certified as a brand. There can be up to 5 to 6 months waiting time and process time for your own company to get ready for the audit process. It's meticulous record keeping. You have to know that it does take a lot for the company to change in terms of process, in terms of documentation, to be able to be audited at some point. You, of course, as I said earlier, regular renewals. You have to know that they have to come once a year to audit you, these auditors, and have to check up on all of the things that are in the standards. And there is the involvement of the entire company. That one is really important. You'll also have this sent out. So I won't go into much detail, but this is just to really demonstrate the fact that the whole company is really involved when you become certified. It isn't just the CSR manager over in the corner. She knows all about it, so she's going to do everything for us. It has to be the entire company, because all the way from design, choosing to work with the certified materials, to buying, of course, with maintaining and sourcing the right suppliers, all the way to sales, that has to ensure that the license number or the certification in some point is visual on the sales orders, to the suppliers, of course, with their scope certificates, and making sure to send the transaction certificate to the warehouse that has to store the goods in the right way, and in the end to the marketing department that has to ensure that it's approved the way that they are showing the logo on everything. So this is just a visualization of the fact that it really does take the whole company to become certified, and to ensure that the continuous certification and audit process becomes as smoothly as possible. All right. So that was my presentation. So now I want to welcome Signe and Camilla for today. Thank you so much for joining. So I actually would like just to start off with to ask you to introduce yourself just shortly. Thank you. Camilla, please start.
Yes, thank you. I'm Camilla, and I work as a production and sourcing manager at Week, which is a children's wear brand in Denmark. I've been there for 7 years almost, so a long time. So I've sort of been a part of this process from the beginning, and I've also been a part of pushing the agenda, because Weed is a brand that's worked with natural fibres since the beginning, and it's been around for over 20 years. But making the move to be more conscious about using organic cotton and in polyester products, maybe converting to recycled, that's been a process that I've been involved in, and now it's a whole different talk about better materials, whatever that is.
Yeah, thank you so much, Camilla. And Stine, if you can introduce
yourself. Yeah, good to be here today. Thanks for inviting me. I work as an independent sustainability consultant, and as you mentioned, Anja, I also work as a freelance auditor for a control union, where I visit companies to conduct audits in GOTS and the textile exchange standards. And then as a sustainability consultant, I work with due diligence processes, and I also help companies become certified, choosing the right certification and understanding the requirements and implementing them. But of course, if I help a company become certified, I don't conduct the audit. There is like a very strict line there, because of course the auditor needs to be objective and not involved in the company in any way.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, thank you so much, both of you. So let's start off with you, Camilla. I wanted first of all to ask you, why did your company choose to become certified? What was the reasons for this?
There were several reasons. One of them is we are a quite small production, compliance and sustainability team. I'm using the word sustainability now. In Denmark, it's sort of for party use it, but in this closed forum, I will, because it's just more easy. But we're a very small team, and as you mentioned in your presentation, there are a lot of rules, a lot of guidelines, and a lot of things that we have to pay attention to, and it takes a lot of resources that we don't necessarily have on a day-to-day basis. So in the process of setting down our sustainability strategy and trying to make the work as easily manageable as possible, we've had a lot of talks about how can we do that. And we found that on a product level, it would be to get certifications. Because there are clear guidelines, a clear framework of how to work with your products to be compliant within the certification. So for that reason, that made sense for us. Then there's a whole nother thing about customer requirements. We've seen, especially over the past few years, that if you want to get the sustainable tick on websites with customers and things, you have to be certified. It's no longer enough to say that we use organic or recycled materials. We've done that for many years, and we've always obtained certificates for the materials, but now the customers really require that we as a brand and as a company, we have our own certification and can provide the TCs if they need to see them. And then there's communication. As I just mentioned, sustainavoice and sustainability is a word that's difficult to use in communication in Denmark, at least, due to greenwashing. So for us to be able to communicate as much and as clearly as possible, we find that having the certifications will also help. We only got certified in March of this year, so we haven't launched certified products yet. They're coming. We've just a few months ago closed the first order, so we're really excited to be able to launch properly with products and go out and really tell the world that we are certified now.
And I know from you that you chose to, or your company chose to work with the GOTS, the GRS, and the RWS, which in a sense is a lot. I think it's 3 different certifications. Can you tell me a bit about why those 3? Why
Those well, yeah, we chose the full shebang and just went all out at once.
Yeah.
Those three covers most of our range. So for us, it made sense.
Yeah.
I can't remember the numbers right now, but I think it's between 80 and 90% of our products which are now certified and covered by those three certifications. So, or will be in the future. Obviously moving towards 100%, but that's a strategy thing that we have to work a bit more with. So we chose them to cover as much ground as possible, and we chose to do it all at once because we had no clue how much work it would be. But I don't want to discourage anyone. If you want to go for 3, it's manageable. Get a consultant. It's my first advice. But it's been a really good process. And I'm glad that we did them all at once, because it's a lot of work and they are different, but a lot of the work has been similar. So it was okay to do it once, but it was also hard.
It kind of taps into the next question, which is, which challenges did you experience? Can you give some examples of which challenges were there in the process?
I think for us, the main challenge has been internal resources. It is quite time consuming. And as I mentioned, we're a small team. As you said, it's a process that requires full company involvement. That has also been a challenge, to get everyone in the company to understand why it's important for them, even though they might not be hands-on with the products every day. But that's been a fun challenge to run around the company and flag it and try and make it interesting for everyone. And another challenge has been getting the suppliers to understand the importance of it, because for a long time we've worked with organic cotton, we've worked with recycled polyester and nylon, and they've provided us with the fabric TCs, which for a long time has been enough. So to get them to understand why they should make the investment and get certified themselves has been at some points difficult. We're lucky that we have long-standing working relationship and partnerships with our suppliers. So we've been able to engage in the conversation and really talk about how it's not just important for us, but can be important for their future business as well. Now I think we have 2 suppliers left who are not certified, and there are certain circumstances that they are not right now. We're hoping that they will be, or otherwise we know that we have to part ways at some point. And that's difficult when you've been working with someone for 20 years, but it's necessary for our journey. And we have open and honest dialogue with those suppliers, so they know as well. And we understand why it's difficult for them. But because we've chosen to be open and honest with our suppliers, with everyone, this is not an easy feat. And just because we have 3 product certifications doesn't mean that we are a sustainable brand. We're a brand that tries the best we can, but we can still get better, and we strive to do that every day.
That's good. All right. So moving on to you, Stine, as well. I might get back to you as well, Camilla, but moving on to you, Stine, I thought of just starting off with a question about the non-compliance. I did mention it briefly earlier that you come out as an auditor, and once you do that, you go through the whole shebang of all the things that they are audited for. So in Camilla's example, it would be 3 certifications and thereby 3 standards that they then have to uphold. And thereafter, you find non-compliances. What are the most common ones that you find out there in the Danish market at the moment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the first and most important one is if companies have not understood the importance of the transaction certificates, because those documents are the ones proving that the products are in fact certified. So I sometimes see when I conduct audits that they have the TC for the raw material or the fabric, but that is not enough. It needs to be a transaction certificate with all the right information from the supplier to the brand that I'm auditing. So that is one non-conformity that are quite often raised, and it can be very complex for companies to solve because there is a deadline for when you can actually get the transaction certificates or the TCs. And together with that, then another non-conformity that I often raise is that companies do not check all chain of custody documents properly. There is like things that companies need to check, and they also need to have like a procedure for what and how to check. So that is also a non-conformity that I often quite need to raise. Then it's actually related a bit to what you talked about earlier with involving the right people or departments in the company. It's as you showed in the overview, it's important to also include design, marketing, sale, logistics. Sometimes I see, or quite often actually, I see that it has been something that has started in the purchase department, and then they try to solve everything that is related to the certification, but that is almost impossible. Some responsibilities needs to be divided also to HR in terms of social compliance, and environmental compliance also needs to be taken care of. So I often see that the companies are not totally aware of that. It's actually quite important to broaden it out and to train people. Yes, and then I wrote two more. One is that especially smaller companies, but sometimes it's also go for larger companies, that the companies are working in the right way, but they have not documented it. And if the standards mention, for example, policies, procedures, and records, then it needs to be something that is written down. And that is really important for the companies that go for certification to understand. It could also be training records, internal inspection, that is now a requirement in the textile exchange standards. And then the last thing I see is exchange of personnel. That there is often, when new people get on board, that they are not properly introduced to the requirements, and they are trying to catch up themselves. But that often means that some things are dropped, and often sometimes quite important things.
I can imagine. Okay. So in relation to that, can you just, I know it's probably not a brief thing, but maybe try and briefly tell us a bit about the auditing process. So once you come into the company, what happens? How are they audited?
Well, it starts off with an opening meeting where I introduce what is going to happen during the day, and then I actually start one area at the time, talking about procedures and training records. I do document check, where it's where you see, like, you pick some samples to check, and then of course everything is in dialogue with the company, then there is also like a visual inspection of the company, and if there is a warehouse, either the company's own warehouse or if it's a subcontracted warehouse, that needs to be visited as well. And if it's a subcontracted warehouse, that's like a whole day for itself, because they need to implement all the requirements as well. Then there are some employee interviews, and then after everything has like been going through, there is a closing meeting where it's like the audit is finalized and all the non-conformities are I talk through and how to solve the non-conformities if there are any.
Very cool. So as an auditor, but of course also in your role as a consultant out there, why do you think it's important to become certified in this industry?
I think it's important to start with like a general assessment of the company's material impacts on the people and planet, for the company to understand our company with the products that we make in the countries that we produce, have producing partners, and like the complexity and who we trade with, to see what is our material impacts when it comes to human rights and labor rights, environment and climate, biodiversity, and then from there see, so can any of the certifications that are in the industry, can they help us manage those material impacts and risks? I think that's it should be the starting point. And of course that could be linked to are the different certifications known in the countries, so it's actually also help us communicate to our customers about the different certifications. I think it makes sense that it's something that is known to the people that you want to sell your products to.
Yeah, of course, to the country that you're operating in. Yeah, makes sense. All right, so I have a final question, which is for both of you, so you'll both get to answer, of course. What is your advice to companies wishing to become certified? So if somebody out there is watching or will be watching a bit later, they're sitting there with the same idea of becoming certified, what is your advice to them? Camilla?
I think my first and biggest advice would be, depending on company size and resources available, hire a consultant, because it's complex work. I couldn't have done it without, and I say I've done it all by myself. I haven't, but I've done a lot of the work, and made sure that the people who needed to help me do the work also finished it. And we managed to get no non-compliance, which I'm very proud of. Also with the 3 certifications at once, and then also make sure that it's that everyone's on board, especially management, so that you get the time allocated, because it's not a job that you can just do in between. It's something that needs to be prioritized.
Yeah, good advice. Signe?
I think my first advice would be that make sure that it's like a strategically founded decision. So you just don't go for a certification without really knowing why and how it fits into your company. Yeah. And then my second advice would be to read the standards. Maybe that's really obvious, but I know that it's also important to mention that you actually need to read and understand the standards and get help if you don't understand them, because when we come as auditors, we ask specific questions related to the standard, and if you don't comply, you get a non-conformity, and then you need to solve it afterwards anyway before you can get certified.
Yeah, but they are quite
to keep it short,
right? The standards, they are quite complex to read. Speaking as one that has read them as well, I think they are quite complex to read, so it might be a good idea to get a bit of help in that sense as well, especially working with three certifications. All right, thank you so much, both of you. We'll probably come back for some questions. I just need to introduce Ulla. So Ulla will take you through the certification management in Delog, and I will stop sharing my screen so that Ulla can take over. Maybe. There we go. I've done that now.
All right.
Take it away, Ulla.
Yep. Hang on. And share. Let's hope it works. All right. Well, that's not working. There we go. Hang on. Can you see my screen now? I can't hear you. Here we go. Is it working? Okay. Right, here we go. Well, I'm Ulla, and I'm working as a customer success manager in Delog, which is a PLM system that many of you probably know. And I am here to talk about how to keep track of all these informations and all these documents that is required when you are working with compliance, because it's a huge task, as you can hear, and it goes through the entire organization. So first we'll look at all the different roles in Delog. We've seen this before in an earlier slide, But you can see the designers, they are creating the styles in the log, and they're doing the item list, BOM list. And in order to keep track of they make the correct choices, they need to be in deep contact with buying, and I need to know what compliance are we supposed to meet within our company and in our designs. And the buying department, when the order is placed, they have to get all the TCs ready, and they need to be collected and stored in a proper way so you can find them for coming audits. The ESG manager, or who is in charge of this within the company, they will keep track of the whole skeleton, the whole admin part of your compliance plan within the log. Sales need to be able to access information about compliance, and they need to be able to provide the customer service with information they can pass on to their customers. Suppliers, they will have to deliver all the test results, the scope certificates and transaction certificates on request. And of course, marketing needs to ensure that they're not saying anything which is not in compliance with what's happening within this company, and that they don't get to write something which is not true on websites and e-commerce platforms. In the log, we are so happy that we are going to release a whole new module in mid-October, which is which can take care of your work with compliance. It is a new module that we have made, and therefore I can only give you a sneak preview into it. So I will share some screen dumps from the new module and take you through how it's built up. So let's have a look. First, we are here now in the admin section of the log. Those of you who work in the log will recognize this view, but we now have the admin section, and there's a whole new area here which is called compliance. This is where you set up the structure of your work with compliance. This is where you fill in the different types of standards you are working with, the different technical specifications that you are working with. You can upload the actual standards as documents, so you can always find them, you know where they're stored, and you will set up your whole structure in here. And we have now jumped to the new compliance module. This is where you have your daily work of adding the different kind of certificates. So here you can see this company have added some different certificates. There's a scope certificate on GSR. We can see GRS, sorry, and you can see the actual file filled in here. You can see which institute is working with it, and you can see which supplier it's related to. You can see here upload files, so you can store them in here. You can also see there is a TC, there is some test reports, and they're all stored in here with different dates. So you can see the validity dates in here as well. You can also set a notification date so that you well in time before it expires are notified, and you can get hold of your supplier and ask them to send you a new updated certificate if it's relevant. Let's go to the next one. Oops. Yes, here you can see a scope certificate, and you can see that there has been added some different styles to it. So in here, you will add which styles is actually covered by this certificate. So you have a possibility to add styles, and you can add items that are covered. Here we can see there's a jacket, some pants, a suit, and a button that is covered by this specific certificate. Let's jump to the next one. You can also see here's a scope certificate from an item supplier, and you can see this cover. This is regarding a recycled cotton hand tag, and you can see the supplier, and you can actually jump directly to the brand where it has been used. Let's see the next one. Here's a TC, and you can see who made it. You can see the license number. You can see what PO it's related to, and you can see which actual styles is covered by this certificate. Now I've jumped to the styles within the log as you know it, some of you. So here is all our styles, different ones. And first we look at a thermal jacket, and now there's a new tab here which is called compliance, And here you can see which certificates does this thermal jacket have. It has 2 different certificates. You can see the license numbers, you can see the validity dates, and you can also see what items that are covered here, what items in the item list that has certificates. And you can therefore easily jump back to your item list and see, have I actually added the correct item to my item list, so that supplier knows that this is this specific item I want him to use. You can also look at the rain jacket here, and that's just the different certificates related to this product. Yes, so this was a very brief run through of the new compliance module from Deloc, and we will jump to an Q&A session. Of course, you will be able to ask many more questions also about the compliance module from Deloc. You can, as a Deloc user, you can reach out to your contact person within the company if you have more questions, but there will be plenty of opportunities to book demos and ask questions and all sorts of things. You will have that information after this meeting as well. So Anja, I'll stop sharing and you can go into your questions now. Let's see if I can stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Ulla. So there is actually already a question for you, Ulla. Margrethe is asking, hi, is it the suppliers who upload the TC and scope certificates in Deloc?
No, you will upload them, but they will send them to you. So, yeah.
Good. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen again. Yep. So does everybody see my screen again? I'm not really sure why it's not. Oops. I'm just going to go. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry. So, and there is a question from me as well. Is the compliance module up and running? And if yes, what is the price? Very specific for me as well.
No, it will be launched by mid-October. And if you are pro users, you will have it in your license already. So, but it will be launched by mid-October.
Mid-October. I think everybody is really looking forward to it. I think there is a question about, will it be possible to search the certificates? I think maybe we need to elaborate on this. So maybe it's a question about whether or not you're able to search in Deloc for the different certifications.
Oh yes, you are. There will be plenty of ways you can filter on certifications or suppliers, or many ways of getting to find what you need. I can say that. Yeah.
Perfect. From the TC are the numbers? Okay. Are the numbers from TCs the red from the D system, or is it manual punching to register?
What numbers are we talking about?
Maybe it's the license or the document number, of the transaction certificates. So everything is manually put in at this time. Yeah, you have to manually put in the different numbers, the different license numbers, and the different document numbers that you have. Yeah. Is this new compliance module fully integrated with custom export?
Oh, one of the more tricky ones. We will have to come back to that one.
We'll save that question and come back to that one to be able to answer that. All right. Are there any questions for either Signe or Camilla or any of the others? I think there is a question whether or not you'll be able to make reports at some point, right, Ulla? That at some point it will be possible.
Yeah. We are now releasing the first part of the compliance module, and there will be more parts. So the things we are not covering now, we will be covering in the updates. We will be coming in the following time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is definitely a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, as always with development of an IT system. All right. And there is a question as well. Will the log be able to notify that we are missing to receive TC for specific orders?
No. You have to keep, but it will be notifying if it's running out or deadlines and that kind of things. But no, you have to keep track of things yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you would, and I think if you're working with it already, you will be able to contact Ulla and be able to talk to her about those specific things, because in terms of TCs, you would be able to put them in prior to actually, or at the time that you place the order. You can punch in the PO number in the DeLog system now and say that I'm going to need a TC for this, and then in an expiration date or a valid date for that. So in that way, it would be able to give you some sort of, I have to remember to ask for a TC and push for a TC with the supplier. There is a question for Signe. Do you think the log will be possible to use during an audit, or do we need to print everything out?
Yes, that's a good question. When I conduct audits, I don't require that things are being printed out. I just need to check all the documents, but that can be done on a computer as well. So as long as all the documents that I need to see is in the log, then it can be shown from there, I guess. Yeah.
Good. And it's also a question here for Signe, that you mentioned that when certified, it is important to get documentation back in the supply chain. Can you explain a little more of this, as so far it have been enough to get the scope and TC from the garment factory?
Yes, I can clarify. Yes, what auditors check is the scope certificate and the transaction certificate from your supplier. So we don't check documents further back in the supply chain. That is being done during audits at the different parts of the supply chain if the whole chain is certified. So sorry if that was unclear. It is still the scope certificate and the transaction certificate of the finished goods that we as auditors check.
Good. All right. So are there any more questions at this time? Otherwise, as you saw in the presentation, you have also the contact information for everyone. So if you want to reach out to any of the ones today, Signe, Camilla, Ulla, or myself, you're always welcome to, write an email or contact us at LinkedIn or something like that. Yeah. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so the final slide as well is for the next webinar that we're hosting, which will be on Thursday, October 5th at 9, so same time as today, but it will be a little bit shorter. So it's not going to be this type of mini masterclass. It's going to be where I interview a person who knows about due diligence in the fashion industry, which is still quite a hot topic, and many brands out there are a bit uncertain of how to get started with this. So we're going to dive into how your brand can lead in responsible corporate behavior and work with due diligence as a textile and fashion brand. Lifestyle and fashion brand. Yeah, so you can register here. You'll also get it sent out. And if there aren't any more questions or anything, thank you so much for today. Thank you for joining me, Ulla, Camilla, Signe. It was such a pleasure, and thank you for joining me, everyone watching. Yeah, so have a great day. Thank you. Bye.